now you're sitting in right, and now speaking will be James Bamford, and we will continue, I think, on the subject of signals and signal intelligence and that that in essence is about. So, enjoy.
Great, thanks very much. Really great being here. I love being in Vienna. It's a terrific place to do a talk. I used to come here a lot when I was covering the Cold War for ABC News. So my job was chasing spies here in Vienna. And one of my most memorable times was being arrested by the Austrian secret police and then interrogated for about 2 hours. This was, let me see if I can get this here. I was after this guy, Hilton Szabo. He was one of the most wanted American spies. He was running a very big spy ring here in Vienna. He was a former U.S. Army officer, and I wanted to interview him. So it took me about a week to find him. He was hiding out, but I found him, and then I wanted to follow him around Vienna for about half a day, just see where he went before I approached him for an interview. What I didn't know was the Austrian secret police were also following him, and they couldn't understand who I was. So after about an hour or two, they pulled me over and pulled me out of my car and took me down. They thought I was a assassin from the communist countries trying to assassinate Szabo, who had defected to the west here to Austria. So anyway, that was my last experience here in Vienna. So I'm happy to be here, not under interrogation, and to give my little talk. One of the reasons that I'm giving this talk here today is I did a piece for the Nsf magazine a few months ago, basically, on this case in Athens. And I'd really been fascinated by it for years. There was this event in Athens where this huge bugging operation was discovered. It was an enormous scandal in Athens. There was it was basically like Watergate in Athens. It was discovered that somehow, some way, somebody was bugging the major aspects of the government. The prime minister, his wife, the mayor of Athens, most of the top officials in Greece. And that was back in 2004 during the Olympics there. So that became a big scandal, but nobody knew what to do with it because nobody knew who did the bugging. I mean, they did a number of investigations in Greece, and they didn't come up with much evidence. Well, I interviewed Ed Snowden last summer. I spent 3 days with him in Moscow, hanging out with him. And then I did the cover story for Wired. So in addition to interviewing him, I also got access to Snowden's documents. And going through the documents, I saw documents that dealt with the bugging of the Greek government, the bugging of the Greek telecom system in the Snowden documents that had never been revealed before. So I really started to look into it, and I found a number of sources in Washington. That's sort of what I do, is I specialize in intelligence. So I had some top NSA and CIA officials I talked to, and one of them told me, yes, it was an NSA bugging operation. Not only that, it was a rogue operation. It was an operation that was done without the permission of the CIA chief of station in Athens. One of the things I did just recently, if you wanted to look at it this week, is I did a piece on the attack in Paris. Just came out a couple days ago in Time. And one of the things that the director of the CIA came out with this week was to basically blame Snowden for the fact that the U.S. failed in its attempt to discover this event before it happened. So I wrote a piece basically saying it had nothing to do with Snowden. It was just bad intelligence. The NSA has missed virtually every intelligence or every terrorist incident since the beginning, so it wasn't really any big surprise. This is the person that was involved in the Athens affair. That's what it was called in Athens, the Athens affair. Kostas was a really interesting guy. He had his master's degree in electrical engineering. He got that in the UK. He was about to be married. He was happy. He was living a very good life in Athens. And these are some more pictures of him. And then he was found hanged. That's a picture of him after they took him down. He was hanging in his apartment, and he was hanging from the ceiling leading into the bathroom. What had happened was the day before, the CEO of Vodafone, the big wireless company in Greece, discovered malware. They had discovered malware, a huge piece of malware, and they had it removed. And the next day, Kostas was found dead. So, obviously led to questions, how did this happen? What was Kostas' connection? And again, there was no answer because there was no leaks from the US, nothing came out. And again, this is one of the reasons I decided to look into this. Here's one of the documents. And what this article I did does, which I've been writing about NSA forever, but it's one of the very few times you could take an NSA operation from the very beginning to the very end and show exactly how the whole thing worked. So the very first thing, and this, sort of should be a wake-up call to governments in Europe, or actually anywhere around the world, South America and other places, is the NSA will come into a country and they'll say, look, you're going to have the World Cup, or you're going to have the Olympics, or you're going to have some big event. Well, you need us because we can tell you when there's going to be a terrorist event because we can search through all the communications. So, have us come in, have us bug your whole telecom system, and we can help you. We're there to help you. So that's what they did. They got the permission from the Greek government to come in and do the bugging. And what this document here from the Snowden archive talks about is they've been doing this for years. NSA has been going around to various Olympic venues and saying, we're here to help, and let us come in and bug all your phones, and after it's over, we'll disappear and you'll never hear from us again. So that's pretty much what NSA's pitch was to the Greek government. So that's the agreement. This was from one of my intelligence sources. The Greeks identified terrorist nets, so the NSA put these devices in there, and they told the Greeks, okay, when it's done, we'll turn it off. So my information is coming from both Snowden documents and also from senior NSA officials. One of the key things, and this is something that's very rarely discussed, especially by NSA or the CIA, is when they want to do these kind of operations. You can do a fair amount remotely, but if you really want to get in there and get a lot of intercept done, you really prefer to have an inside person, somebody in the country who works for the telecom system. And in this case, it's the CIA that actually goes in there and recruits a spy. That's their job. CIA is human intelligence, NSA is technical. So they had a CIA person that went in there, and this is what the intelligence source said. You could just read that. NSA, like I said, collects the technical side, but they need the human aspect, and so they really need the CIA to do that. So the CIA comes up with a recruiter, and this was the recruiter. Looks like Santa Claus. Actually, that was one of the few public shots of Basil. Basil was never known until I did this story. I found out who he was, and I did a lot of investigation into who he was and where he came from and how he did his work and everything, which is in the article. But he was the chief recruiter in Athens for the CIA, recruiting local Greek citizens to spy for the U.S. He had one picture taken for Facebook, and he put this phony beard on. I think it's just glued on or whatever to hide his face. His family was on either side. I managed to find that picture. Here's a picture I got from the Greek government. It was his passport picture. Here's another picture of him in his, from a visa. And this is a picture I found. His daughter got married in Greece, and I managed to find the photos of the wedding. He was trying to hide from the photographer. You can see he was just, as soon as he saw the photographer, he put his head down. He didn't want any pictures taken of him. So this is the CIA official that was involved in the case. Again, he wasn't really known until really exposed here in these stories. So one of the things that made the embassy, or actually one of the things that made Basil really useful, was that he was his parents were born in Greece. He'd been back and forth to Greece a great deal. He spoke Greek fluently, like a native. He knew everything about the culture. This is Basil as a young kid, over when his father got remarried on one of the Greek islands. We got that from one of his relatives. And this was his business card. He was posing, that's his cover title, First Secretary Regional Affairs for the embassy. In reality, he was a CIA covert officer. So Costas was the perfect inside person if the CIA wanted to recruit somebody. He was a 39-year-old telecom engineer. He was a network planner, manager. He'd risen up the ranks. He'd been there, I think, a dozen years. So if somebody wanted to recruit somebody, and that's Costas inside the facility, the Vodafone facility. So if somebody wanted to recruit somebody, Costas would be a perfect person to do. As I mentioned, that's his brother. I interviewed his brother, and Costas was living a happy life. He was doing very well right up until the time they found his body hanging. And nobody could understand why he would commit suicide. I mean, there was no real reason. He was fine financially, he was about to get married, had a nice living, but ironically, he was found dead the day after the bugging was discovered. So once you recruit the inside person, the next thing is to develop the malware, to take control of the system, to take control of the network, basically, to take control of Vodafone, all the cellular phones, cell phones in Greece that are using the Vodafone system, and that was the biggest system there. NSA developed a procedure known as Lawful Intercept. Well, let me back up. Lawful Intercept is a program that goes with most telecom systems. If you're buying a big system, if you're Vodafone and you're buying a big system, the company you're buying it from, in this case it was Ericsson, will also supply you with a program known as Lawful Intercept. All that is a program that if the government wants to monitor somebody's phone, a suspect's phone, legitimate monitoring of criminal activity or whatever, there's a technical capability of doing that. It's called the Lawful Intercept System. And so it comes as a package. And Vodafone got it Vodafone got it from Ericsson, and Costas actually was the person who signed for it. The problem was the Greek government didn't have any capability for doing eavesdropping. It didn't have, it was a very rudimentary alligator clip type bugging system they had. So they didn't have a system for widespread eavesdropping, so they never needed the Lawful Intercept program. And because they didn't need the Lawful Intercept program, Vodafone never bought it from the, well, they had it there, but they never paid for the key. They never paid for the digital key to turn it on. But it cost tens of thousands of euros to pay to Ericsson to actually turn it on. So they never turned it on. Well, that was the perfect opportunity for NSA. NSA developed malware. You see what the next slide is here. Yeah, this was the NSA's program. This is one of the top secret slides from Snowden. And this was the NSA's basic internal roundtable about how to turn lawful intercept programs to their use. And so the way the system worked was the NSA developed this malware that they put into the system that would not activate the, actually let me go to the next slide, I think it'll be a little bit more. Yeah, there's two parts of the Lawful Intercept system. The first one is the Nsf Management System, and that basically creates an audit trail. So if you're the Greek government, you want to come in, you want to eavesdrop on James Bamford because you think he's a spy, then you turn that over to the to Vodafone. Vodafone puts my name and my phone number into that first program, the Nsf Management System, the IMS. And then the second, that will keep a record of the intercept. The second part, the RES, will actually initiate the tap. I mean, that's actually doing the tap. So the malware that NSA came up with bypassed the first part and secretly turned on the second part without ever notifying Ericsson that they were turning on the system without the key or whatever. So if anybody looked at it, they would see that there's no activity, when in reality they are doing a great deal of eavesdropping. So that was the way the NSA has been using in countries around the world. Countries that don't necessarily use the Lawful Intercept or even do. The NSA will come in there and secretly turn that system to their own use. And this is again from another slide from Snowden. It shows all the different places where the NSA has used this technique of lawful intercept. So that's one way into the system. The NSA uses a variety, and Duncan did a really excellent job, did a lot of my work for me by explaining how that system works. These other systems work. So in addition to eavesdropping, using that system I just mentioned, subverting the lawful intercept, they have other ways. Foreign sat is foreign satellite interception, and these are all top secret slides from Snowden. The one on the right shows where all these foreign sat locations are. Those are big satellite dishes intercepting satellite communications. Microwave F6, that was the system that Duncan mentioned, the special collection service, those little huts on the tops of embassies. And what they do is they collect the microwaves passing through the city. So they're getting all the local communications, and because the embassy is usually along an embassy row or an embassy area, you're getting a lot of foreign embassy communications as well as the federal or the national government communications. S6 is the internal code for Special Collection Service. Special Source Operations is the section of NSA that works with the telecom companies. In other words, they would work with AT&T to secretly get AT&T to eavesdrop on U.S. communications, and in this case, they probably worked with Vodafone to get the access. And then you get the TAO, the Tailored Access Operations. They're the ones who actually would do that malware. They were the ones who would have created that malware. So all these groups, according to the Snowden documents that I had, all these groups, people from all these groups were sent to Athens to do this work. So basically, now you've got the inside you've got the agreement of the government, you've got the inside person, you've got the malware, you've got the external intercept operations going. What now was needed was some way to get that information after it's been collected, after it's been intercepted, basically, in Vodafone. In other words, phone calls will come in from the targets, and then there'll be a duplicate made of those signals, and that signal then will be, the duplicate signal will be sent out to an NSA facility. So you need some way to get that signal out. And normally, in a normal case, it would go out to the law enforcement agency of Greece or whatever, if this was a legitimate wiretap. But since it wasn't a legitimate wiretap, and since it wasn't going to the Greek government, NSA had to find a way to do that. So they came up with a whole bunch of basically they're called shadow phones, or phones that are untraceable. They go around to a lot of places, buy these phones that are untraceable, and then the signals get transmitted to these phones. And once they're transmitted to the phones, then the phones then transmit them to another location, which is NSA's secret location where they have the ability to store them and analyze the communications. But if anybody did trace them, they would only go to these untraceable, or if anybody did follow the signal, they'd only go to these untraceable satellite or cell phones, and they go no further. So it was a very good setup. You got the agreement of the government, you put them in there, look for terrorists during the Olympics, keep everybody happy. Get an inside person there, you get the malware, then you exfiltrate the intercepted communications to these cell phones, these untraceable cell phones, and then that puts it into NSA. So what happens now? The Olympics are all over. You know, they have a closing ceremony. That's supposed to be the end of the operation. The NSA is supposed to take it all out, fly back to Fort Meade, and say goodbye to the Greek government and the Greek telecom system. The problem was, according to my confidential source, they never removed it. All they did was they turned it off for a day, and then they turned it back on again. But now, instead of going after the terrorists, which is the whole raison d'etre for operation in the first place, now they're secretly turning it on the Greek government. They're turning on the prime minister, his wife, I don't know why, but they did, and the mayor of Athens. You know, that'll keep us safe by knowing what the mayor of Athens is telling us. This is total overreach by the NSA, but this is what they do. This is just one little example. You could extend this around the world to other places. I mean, it came out in Germany that they were bugging Angela Merkel and so forth. So this is just standard operating procedure. I mentioned this to a senior NSA source and said, you know, is this unusual or what? He laughed and he says, so they never remove it. Are you kidding? Once you got it in there, you leave it in there. So that's just standard operating procedure for NSA. Then everything's going fine. The Olympics are over. NSA is doing the illegal eavesdropping, and then something happened. Somebody put some malware, or rather, somebody puts a either a reboot or some change into the Vodafone system, whatever, they update a system, something happens, routine update or whatever. But because of that, it screws up the NSA system. And as a result of that, it prohibited, or it stopped a number of text messages from going out. So they began getting complaints from customers that they weren't getting text messages. Well, that set off like a burglar alarm at Vodafone. You know, all of a sudden the system isn't working. People are losing their text messages. So what happened was that they sent all the data, all the printouts and everything to Ericsson for technical analysis. And on March 8th, Ericsson sent back to Vodafone a report saying, you know, sorry folks, but you've got a huge bug in your system there, a 6,500 line piece of code of malware in there. So you got a huge problem. You got a very big bug in your system for some reason. The CEO of Vodafone did a bad mistake. Whether he did it on purpose or not, nobody can know at this point, but he immediately got rid of that malware. The problem with doing that, I mean, the good thing is you get the malware out. The bad thing is there's no way to do a forensic analysis now. You can't figure out where it came from. You can't trace it back very well. It's like destroying the evidence. Anyway, the next day, that's when Costas was found dead. Costas was going to, or Costas' brother was going to Costas' apartment, and he walked in there and saw his brother hanging from the ceiling. Horrible, horrible event. So then there were a few pieces of technical detail that the Greeks could trace back. And they were able to trace the signals, some of the signals being sent to some of the phones, the supposedly untraceable cell phones. And what they did was they saw the signals all went in the direction of the U.S. Embassy. So, you know, there's a fairly big clue there, but there was no smoking gun. I mean, again, they didn't have the Snowden documents that I had, they didn't have the sources I had that told me these things. All they had were diagrams of where signals were going. So, after a decade of on-again, off-again investigation, and the Greeks, give them credit, they were really trying to find this out. But, you know, how do you find, these are invisible signals, it's very, very difficult. So, one of the things they were able to find, though, was that some of the cell phones were bought from a particular cell phone store. And they were able to trace back they were able to find out who purchased them. The owner of the cell phone store actually recognized when the Greek investigator showed pictures. Pictures of Basil's wife as being the person who purchased the shadow phones. Well, there's a big clue right there. And that's how Basil came into the picture in terms of the Greek investigation. In addition to that, they were very sloppy. I mean, the CIA, it's not what you see on television. It's a very sloppy organization most of the time. They used some of these untraceable cell phones to make calls to Maryland, where NSA is, to the embassy, and all that. So they were able to see that the phone calls, these shadow phone calls bought by the CIA officer's wife, were actually being made to not only collect the signals, intercept the signals, but then make phone calls to the embassy and even to Maryland, even a place where Basil used to live outside of or near NSA. So it was very sloppy, and as a result, there's now an arrest warrant out for Santa Claus. He hasn't come back to Greece. It's really sad for him, actually, because he has a house on a little island in Greece. His wife's actually living in Athens. His wife is ethnically Greek also. And he, according to documents I found, where he was signed a petition not to have some land use or whatever, something in Athens I found. It said, I'm planning to retire in Athens. Well, that's out the window now, unless he wants to spend his retirement in a Greek jail. So the Greeks are after him. He hasn't surfaced. I've found his locations in the U.S. several places and sent emails and phone calls to he and all his relatives, his wife, his son, his daughter, everybody. But he never got back to me, big surprise. So he's disappeared someplace in the U.S. and if he ever goes back to Greece, there will be an arrest. And if they have an arrest, there will be a trial, and the trial will be very interesting because a lot of this will come out, which is exactly why he will never go back to Greece, and why the U.S. won't send him back. Anyway, Kostas' family is still hoping for answers. They're looking, hopefully maybe there'll be some answers sent from the U.S. government, but I really doubt it. And one of the things they did in 2011, they asked some coroners to re-examine some of the documents that the original medical examiners produced. And they, among the people they asked was a pathologist from the United States, from San Francisco, somebody who has a lot of experience, a medical examiner, a lot of experience in terms of looking into causes of death and so forth. And he went to Athens, he looked at it all, and he thought the whole original examination was very, very sloppy. He didn't actually think that there was a suicide. He thought, it might be murder. So I'm not big on conspiracy theories, but there it is. It's a medical examiner from San Francisco who did say that from looking at the photos and the autopsy report, he didn't think it was suicide. He thought it could be murder for some external cause. So what are the possibilities? I mean, the odds, there's a couple of possibilities here. One is that Kostas was the inside person, and that he thinks he's doing something very patriotic. I mean, he's bugging the system to find terrorists because somebody from either Greek intelligence or Basil posing as somebody, posing in what they call a false flag, pretending he's from the Greek intelligence, saying, oh, we're trying to catch terrorists, so you're doing something very patriotic here. And then all of a sudden discovers they're not looking for terrorists. They're bugging the top people of the government. It'd be like me all of a sudden, or somebody from the U.S. Working for AT&T, just trying to do something honorable, suddenly discovering they're bugging President Obama, his wife, and everybody else in the top members of government. Can you imagine the scandal? I mean, facing your family, the public, everybody, after it's discovered that you're the guy who put the malware in there that caused that. That would be a good excuse for a suicide. On the other hand, he may not have been the inside person. There are other people who could have been the inside person. And Kostas could have been the person who discovered the malware and wanted to report it to the press or to public or expose it somehow. And somebody didn't want him to expose it. And explain that the Vodafone was bugging all these senior members of government. I mean, that would be a good reason to bump them off. So these are questions that haven't been answered, but at least we've moved down the road quite a bit to show how it happened, who's responsible for it, why it happened, and so forth. Anyway, that's my little talk, and we've got 10 minutes left, so if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thanks.
And I also want to thank Duncan because he did a really good job explaining before I got here. So And I always learn stuff from Duncan, and I started in this business a long time ago. So I was really happy. I always follow Duncan wherever I go, so I was really happy to have him here. Anyway, any questions I'm happy to take.
As far as you know, the code you used for the malware was Lua, LUA. As far as you know, the code was valid in Lua.
It was Lawful Intercept. It was malware that tricked
the
them.
language of the malware was not C, C++, or LUA.
Duncan's the guy to ask for, you start getting, I got a law degree here, I don't have an engineering degree, so talk to Duncan. If it's above the level of what I gave you here, talk to Duncan about it, okay?
Because it's something important actually to know, if you can answer.
I think it was a specific language for programming the AKE switch in Vodafone. What family it was derived from, we have to look up, but it wouldn't be a secret.
It should be. And I have a question number 2. Sorry, I'm curious about this. I'm studying on the same topic since 11 years now. So, and I used to know Constantine back in 2002, 2003, 2004. So it happened to meet each other. I'm so sad about it. Are you really sure that the Ericsson guys were so smart to get a copy of the 60,000 lines of code? Because from the OSINT area, from the public information area, all the malware was running in the RAM area, and some smart engineer, they ran a shutdown or a reboot to the NSC, which actually takes hours and hours to reboot. And as far as I know, they don't have any code, any piece of code. Is it true or not?
Well, there's an awful lot of, if you want the technical details, there's a huge amount of documents in Greek, which I don't read, that you can read that actually gives a lot of the technical analysis, because one of the investigations of their, I don't know, 5 or 6 investigations, but one of probably the best investigation was done by the technical, and the report is public now. I had parts of it translated because I had a partner in Greece who was helping me on this, and he translated parts of it for me. But, for my audience, I was talking about the story aspect, not the technical aspect. So you can find a lot of detail in there that would give you those details. I personally don't have those details. But they did say they came up with that 6,500 piece of malware there. So, I just have to take it with the word. There's nothing to go on beyond that.
If you get a hands-on a copy, I would be interested too.
Oh, yeah. There is a lot of Greek documents, which is fantastic if you can speak Greek. But I couldn't read any of those documents. I had to have help translating some of them. But you got, 1,000 pages worth of information there you can read.
So, any further questions from the audience? Then I have a question.
Yeah.
Did the arrest warrant reach the U.S. or is it just valid in?
No, it's an international arrest warrant. It's a Interpol type arrest warrant. So if he goes to any other country outside the United States, those countries are obligated to detain him and then extradite him. It's a full arrest warrant. It's very rare. It's only happened once before, as far as I know, and that's in Italy, where CIA people were subject to arrest. And that was because of this kidnapping, or the technical term for
rendition.
Rendition, yeah, renditioning somebody. So that happened in Italy, but nobody actually went to trial. Nobody went back to Italy, and probably the same thing's going to happen in the United States. But who knows? So if he leaves the country, he could be subject to arrest. So anyway, thanks very much. Appreciate your attention, and I'll be around if anybody else has any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we now have a short break.